السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد. Before I begin, I'd like to note that today's topic is a very heavy and serious topic. I was originally scheduled to deliver this khutbah a few months ago, but I was asked to reschedule it because of the janazah of Sister Margaret, rahimahullah. This topic seems long overdue, but Allah Azza wa Jalla plans for us and He knows what is better at what time. When I approached the leaders and imams about this topic, there was concern of how the public would respond given the sensitivities involved. I have been going back and forth for several months on how to introduce the topic. On many occasions, I found myself waking up in the middle of the night, brainstorming, thinking about what I'm going to talk about. Many occasions, I couldn't sleep at night. Last night, I found myself pacing back and forth in my room and asked Allah Azza wa Jalla to help me and guide me in saying what is beneficial, most beneficial, and to say in the way that's most effective for everyone. I also decided to go ahead and type it up. Normally I don't do that, but today, because of the situation, because of what I'm talking about, I figured it'd be most effective if I put everything down. So let's begin. First, I want to start off introducing this topic by taking a lesson from an example where the Prophet ﷺ showed some humor. Somebody came to the Prophet ﷺ and asked for something to ride on, some animal that he could use to ride on. So the Prophet ﷺ says, bring him the child of a she-camel. And this person is confused and they're asking, what am I going to do with the child of a she-camel? And the Prophet ﷺ responds, doesn't every child come from, or doesn't every she-camel give birth to more she-camels? As in, every human being, in this case, in my case, every human being is a child of their parents. Even if you're a parent, you're still a parent of your parent. You're still a child of your parents. In this case, the child of a camel, it might be an adult, but nevertheless, still there's parents. So the Prophet ﷺ was giving us as an example of humor. So let's get started. Many of us, if not all of us, are familiar with the concept of human rights, be they the rights between the creation and the Lord of the creation, or between leaders and their constituents, or between spouses, or between parents and their children. Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions, مَا غَرَّكَ بِرَبِّكَ الْكَرِيمِ الَّذِي خَلَقَكَ فَسَوَّاكَ فَعَدَلَكَ فِي أَيِّ صُورَةٍ مَا شَاءَ رَكَّبَكَ. Allah Azza wa Jalla, who designed us, created us, fashioned us in the form that He wanted us to have. And He says in Surah Al-Mulk, أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. This is the one who knows about the intricacies of our lives, the subtleties that we may not even be aware of. Al-Latif, He is aware of. And so, knowing those subtleties, knowing those details, He is extremely kind and gentle. He is extremely gracious because He understands the nuances of our lives that we might not be able to perceive. He created us having certain needs, certain core needs and vulnerabilities. He also gave us a brain, which gives us, or which helps us gravitate towards things that benefit us and takes us away from things that harm us, things that we are not pleased with. Simultaneously, He designed for us a system to help us optimally address our needs and the needs of others. Consider these as standard operating procedures, or SOPs, that most effectively allow us to get the needs addressed, our needs addressed individually and collectively. That system is our deen, al-Islam. And He has entrusted us with it, whereas the mountains and samawat, or the heavens, dared not to accept the responsibility, such a heavy responsibility. When we talk about rights, we might consider these as some type of privilege, leading us to often become negligent in addressing the rights of those in our lives. In reality, what we learn from Islam is that these rights are actually human needs. These rights are human needs, without which we're not going to be able to live life, except with extreme difficulty or not at all. In the discussion of maqasid al-Sharia, or the objectives of Sharia, the scholars who mentioned this, they presented 3 levels. The lowest of them is the daruriyat. Al-darura over here is an essential need without which you cannot live. The next level is hajiyat. Al-hajiyat, or a haja, is a need, or it's a need that you have without which you can live, but your life is going to be extremely difficult. And then you have tahsiniyat. A tahsiniyat over here is something that goes beyond that, without which your life is not really going to be negatively affected, but it's nice to have. In this light, Allah Azza wa Jalla has tasked each individual with responsibilities to address the needs of others and of course their own, and has given authority to specific individuals over others according to the level of responsibility and associated accountability for those constituents. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. That each of you is a shepherd and each of you is going to be asked about your flock. Every single human being who is in charge of another person, we will be asked about what Allah Azza wa Jalla has entrusted us. For example, a leader is given authority over his people. A father is given authority over his family. Parents are given authority over their children. Husbands are given authority over their wives and families, and so on. Because each is tasked with properly addressing the human needs of those under him or her. These needs may be physical, financial, mental, or emotional. When these needs are not met, human beings become overwhelmed and may eventually become unable to endure the conditions. That overwhelm might manifest as bitterness, aggression, isolation, intense guilt, self-criticism, low self-esteem, volatile emotional states, manipulation, deceit, lying, and so on. Some of these are coping mechanisms that the brain learns to use as means to navigate toxic or otherwise negative contexts or relationships, especially if someone is stuck therein for extended periods of time. The brain is simply attempting to help the person not become overwhelmed to the point of no return. For some, however, these circumstances lead to suicidal ideation, and among them are those who die by suicide. I want to make note over here. There was a training for imams and leaders on the topic of suicide, and it was done by Maristan, by Dr. Rania Awad. She has a background in Sharia and psychiatry, and she works with the Stanford Muslim Mental Health Lab. And in there, she alerted us that when we talk about suicide, we don't use terminology as committed suicide. Because of the things that we're finding out in the research, we say this person died by suicide. This person might have become overwhelmed. We're not condoning suicide by any means, but we are trying to understand the factors, we're acknowledging and understanding the factors associated with what leads a person towards that end. Whereas Islam may be summarized as the standard operating procedures, SOPs, that help us become good and kind human beings. In reality, when we do not follow these rules, we end up causing harm. Even fasting could be in vain if a person does not leave certain actions. Like the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Allah Azza wa Jalla is not in need of your fasting if you don't leave certain bad actions, whether it's harming other people, abuse, like lying or whatever. Or he mentioned, one word he says, wal jahl, or ignorance, just acting ignorantly, being foolish, silly. Allah Azza wa Jalla is not in need of our fasting if we're not going to leave those things. Because everything in Islam is about being a good human being. If you were trying to communicate what Islam is to a non-Muslim, your summary could be, it's to become a good human being. When we deviate from these procedures or practices, we facilitate or cause the opposite in ourselves and in others, meaning we facilitate harm. The harm we cause is often emotional, and that runs very deep. When our emotional needs are not addressed, or we are made to feel that our needs are invalid, or our feelings are incorrect, or that we're broken, then that harm and pain becomes a baggage we carry into the relationships we enter thereafter. When our pain, hurt, or concerns or confusions are left unaddressed, we can also become toxic human beings towards others. When a child grows up and enters into marital relationships, they often bring these grievances and insecurities and any associated symptoms. Parents with unresolved grievances or unaddressed deep wounds, especially those that are still being triggered, will often interact with their children with these associated symptoms. A given set or combination of these symptoms, like deceit, extreme defensiveness, aggression, violence, verbal or emotional abuse, etc., appearing in individuals, eventually gets a name by researchers in the field of psychiatry. These symptoms put together in a particular person, if they're consistent in other people, eventually these symptoms, these set of symptoms, will be given a name. And these names are then listed in what is called the DSM. The DSM is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of mental disorder. For example, gaslighting. Gaslighting is when you question somebody again and again. Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you're going to change your mind later? And so on and so on. gaslighting, psychological manipulation, lying, high need for attention, and some other patterned symptoms put together, maybe given the condition name of narcissistic personality disorder. The factors that may have precipitated these symptoms over time may include a lack of attention given to the person over their life by parents and family members, or the person may have been belittled and their opinions mocked or dismissed, or there was some other type of family or parental abuse. Perhaps the person was given too much attention and praise, especially related to what they didn't have control over. Other sets of symptoms have other names like borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, dissociative identity disorder, anxiety disorders, depression, PTSD, disruptive or dissocial disorders, and so on. There are psychological and sociological effects as well. There is a famous study on the adverse childhood experiences called the ACEs study. You guys can look it up, inshallah. ACEs study, ACE. And in there, they looked at various negative factors that a child might have grown up. These are called adverse negative childhood experiences. And among them, for example, having dysfunctional families could have, for example, having parents with mental health conditions. It could have a person who's, their father missing, being in prison, for example, or elsewhere not present in their lives, and so on. The results show that people who had these past experiences in their lives, these negative experiences, these traumatic experiences, ended up being more likely to be affected by various situations. For example, they were more affected by health conditions. In other words, their negative health conditions increased compared to the people who didn't have these kind of negative situations. In addition to that, they were more likely to have negative social patterns, behaviors, and so on, substance abuse, and many other things. In a recent survey, 61% of the people reported having experienced at least one ACE, adverse negative experience, before the age of 18. This is our entry into the world of mental health and mental health professionals like therapists, counselors, and psychiatrists. In the past, without the data understanding that we have today, there was a perception among the common people and even mental health professionals of the past that a person is born defective, or if a person develops a certain situation or condition, that they're not going to be able to get out of it, including trauma. New research, which appears to align more with what we know from Islam, from this discussion of human needs, meaning human rights, is that many of these conditions and symptoms can be addressed through a variety of strategies and proper interventions like behavioral cognitive therapies, trauma therapies like EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, mindfulness, positive social connections, gratitude practices, exercise, among others. I want you to think about this for a moment. What are the kinds of things that we're not following of Islam when it comes to our family members, when it comes to our social interactions with people, just overall? And how has that affected us, and how is that leading us to affect others negatively? أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Naturally, given the above and more, when our human needs are not addressed by those given the responsibility, the Rabb or the Lord of the oppressed is very protective of his ibad. Allah Azza wa Jalla is very protective of his ibad that he has put under the care of others. When we hurt other people, when we oppress other people under our care, Allah Azza wa Jalla, remember, is our Rabb first and foremost. Everyone that's under our care is first and foremost the slave of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And if we violate the rules that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us and how we deal with them, we have Allah Azza wa Jalla to deal with. Those with more responsibility and so more authority are held to a higher level of accountability by Allah Azza wa Jalla when He evaluates them when it comes to those He entrusted. remember the dua of the oppressed reaches Allah Azza wa Jalla with a special reaching. There's no barrier between him between the dua and Allah Azza wa Jalla. When our spouses, when our children, whether our siblings or our parents make dua when they really are being oppressed, that dua is going to reach Allah Azza wa Jalla, and He Himself will take it upon Himself to avenge the person. Remember what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned about Allah Azza wa Jalla saying, "Man aadali waliyan faqad adhantuhu bil harb." If somebody is being righteous to Allah Azza wa Jalla, and you show enmity, you try to go against them, you harm them, then Allah Azza wa Jalla has declared war against that person. And where would we escape? Where would we go if we have Allah Azza wa Jalla against us? The leader of a people who had power or authority over them but lied or was unjust will have among the most severe punishments because they had more authority. Allah Azza wa Jalla might not look at this person or speak with this person on the Day of Judgment, and they may be among the most hated to Allah Azza wa Jalla on the Day of Judgment. Similar accountability, though, will take place for those who have high levels of authority, whether it's parents over their children, whether it's spouses, husbands over their wives and families, and so on. This is not to overlook the abuse that may also take place in the other direction, whether in the reverse direction, whether it's parents, whether it's children to their parents, or also which can be classified in some cases as elderly abuse, or wives towards their husbands, and so on. I'm always amazed at one thing. People get married, but they haven't done premarital counseling. They haven't really understood what the needs of the other human being is they're going to be interacting with. Parents, when they have kids, if they're not taking actively courses on what it means for a child to develop, for example, early childhood, what does it mean? What are the needs of a child throughout that process? If we're not actively trying to learn about how to fulfill the responsibility Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us over those young people, how are we going to fulfill the responsibility? On the bright side, there is some hope. Last September, there was a conference, annual Imams conference through Amja, and after this, there was a post-conference workshop. In this, it was specifically for pre-marriage counseling. And in this, Sheikh Yasser Fazaga and Dr. Samira Ahmad from the Family and Youth Institute, they were presenting, and they were talking about how to prepare young people or anybody who's going into a relationship with respect to that relationship. Sheikh Muhammad Faqih, he used to be an imam here many, many years ago. He was in that audience as well. He was one of the people attending. And he said that he doesn't even conduct marriages until the people trying to get married have taken premarital counseling. And the idea is here is for people to discuss any kind of needs that they might have had, anything that they're concerned with, any boundaries that they need the other person to be aware of, any hard asks that they have that they cannot live without. This is a time to really hash out all those details so that when you do get married, you're aware of this and you can respond to the other person's need effectively. In summary, if you took one thing from this whole khutbah, let it be that Islam guides us on how to be good human beings who are tasked with addressing our and others' needs effectively. Those with authority are given the authority proportional to their responsibility and accountability. Do not play around with or harm the slaves of the owner of Jannah. Your Jannah is dependent on how you dispose your responsibility. If you're a parent, if you're a spouse, if you are in any relationship where somebody has rights over you, remember, at the end of the day, your Jannah is tied to how you fulfill your responsibility. If you are using force or fear, intimidation, that because I'm your parent or because I'm your husband, I have these rights over you, I'm not going to let you go to Jannah if you don't do this and that, remember, there is somebody who owns Jannah, and he may not let you go into Jannah. Be careful how you threaten people, because you have somebody who is more concerned over the affairs of his ibad. Do not oppress, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will take care of you. In the meantime, those who are oppressed in their homes or elsewhere, there are case-by-case concessions that the Sharia allows you. You are allowed to ask for help outside of your families, and others are not only allowed to, but also tasked with helping you. If somebody finds out there's harm happening, there is a responsibility on that person to try their best to help the other person. Don't fear. Ask people who can help you. Seek help. There is help available. Be mindful that the objective here is to provide resolutions to try to reconcile hearts. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. The believers are a brotherhood, so reconcile between your brothers. You are allowed to take a break from toxic relationships, including with parents and spouses and siblings and friends, to allow yourself time to heal and recover so you don't perpetuate the same harm. So there is hope. Be mindful that there are concessions the Sharia allows you. And the reason I mention all of this, because I come across cases where people are overwhelmed and they develop certain conditions. Some people even want to leave Islam because they think Islam doesn't make sense when I'm being oppressed and I have no hope. So with that, I want to conclude. ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم انصر المستضعفين المسلمين والمجاهدين في كل مكان. اللهم انصرهم ولا تنصر عليهم. اللهم تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
Before we start, 3 really quick points. Number 1, donations for iftar Ramadan this year for the needy. The Social Welfare Committee is offering iftar to go during this month of Ramadan. So there will be a drive-through mode of delivery. Only needy refugees, travelers, and singles can come pick up iftar between 6 o'clock until 7 o'clock. The Ramadan iftar will be offered on a first-come, first-served basis until quantities last. Donations for the daily iftar program are being sought from the community. The amount needed to cover is $4,000 per day. Donations are sought for the entire month, which would be, if you want to sponsor a day, it'd be $4,000. For 150 people, that's $2,000. That number doesn't make sense. Okay, or a maybe it's 300 people per day. Or a 75% iftar would be $1,000, or whatever amount you could donate. Your generous donations are requested, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your good deeds. Iftar donations can be made there, I think, on checks, online, kiosk in the lobby, or cash on the envelopes, or in the envelopes labeled daily iftar. Number 2, I wanted to apologize if I took a little bit extra time today. It was a heavy topic, as I mentioned. And number 3, people in the back usually, if there's extra space, if you can come in from the gym and then fill up the spaces. We want to make sure that the rows are filled from the middle outwards, and usually when I'm in the back, I see there's a lot of empty spaces. Jazakumullah khairan. Allahu Akbar. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تلهكم أموالكم ولا أولادكم عن ذكر الله ومن يفعل ذلك فأولئك هم الخاسرون. وأنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي أحدكم الموت فيقول رب لولا أخرتني إلى أجل قريب فأصدق وأكن من الصالحين ولن يؤخر الله نفسا إذا جاء أجلها والله خبير بما تعملون. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to your masjid on this lovely day, the 17th. Join us tonight after Maghrib for a special program, Prepare Your Heart for a Fruitful Ramadan, with Imam Badawi and Brother Mansoor Qazi. Imam Badawi and the Ramadan team will also be leading a special qiyam tonight from 9:30 to 10:30. We're looking forward to seeing you today from 5:30 to 7:30 for the Ramadan Lights celebration here at the IAR. Bring your family to enjoy food, ice cream, henna, and desserts available for purchase. Join Al-Iman School to welcome Ramadan and celebrate 30 years of cultivating Islamic identity through academic excellence. This event is open to the whole community, so share with your family and friends. The festival includes rides, food, a bazaar with over 20 vendors, a live mural, and so much more. For more info and registration, go to alimanschool.org. The Outreach Committee invites you to attend a foundational obligatory knowledge course geared towards new Muslims. It'll be 8 weeks long each Saturday, starting tomorrow the 18th. See the announcement email for more info. We need your help to ensure another great Ramadan experience for our IAR community. There are many tasks across many committees to help out with. See the announcement email to sign up for volunteering with these needs, and all opportunities are eligible for any service hours needed. Feed your community in need this Ramadan by donating to our daily iftar fund. Iftar will be provided by Al-Ma'idah Kitchen and is open to students, travelers, and those in need from Monday through Thursday, an hour before Maghrib. Stay in touch by following Al-Ma'idah on their new Instagram page. Introducing the new IAR water bottle. Purchase our first official branded item and help reduce plastic waste this Ramadan. You can purchase them by clicking on products in the donation section of our website. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reach and complete the month of Ramadan. Wassalamu alaikum.